right, everybody, it is Steve with Real Progressives. Tonight, we're going to talk about something that has been eating me alive. See, I take for granted many of you understand economics. I oftentimes take for granted that you all are all fighting for a Green New Deal. I also take it for granted that you value truth over feelings, because truth should guide our feelings, right? We shouldn't be steeped in myths and legends. We shouldn't be supporting lies, even if they're comfortable lies. We shouldn't be allowing our favorite people to lie and get away with it. We shouldn't be celebrating lies. In no way, shape, or form should we be allowing people air cover that lie, okay? Especially when it's verifiably incorrect. And I always think that we're all pulling for the same thing. I always think that like somebody actually listens to my arguments before they fight back. I just have this weird thing that I'm like trusting people that they're not going to just sit there and say, hey, he's bashing the UBI, man. Let's all go dogpile him. We don't know what we're talking about, but damn, we're going to fight back. Okay? I'm just assuming that you have the best of intentions, that you really want to learn, that you're not just saying things because that's what the herd says. I'm trusting you're not a herd animal. Am I putting my faith in all the wrong places? Possibly. But that's where I start from. And what it's caused me is a lot of grief, because I come here and I'm oftentimes blown away, shocked that people are pushing back and saying, I don't know what I'm talking about, or I couldn't even listen to it. He's just so wrong, or something like that. And then, it's just amazing to me. Now, I love when people fact check me. It's the most important part of my night, because when you fact check me, you end up being on my side, because I'm telling you the truth. I gain nothing from telling you anything but the truth. And I value the truth more than I do your opinion of me. That causes some people to get butthurt, and I'm okay with that. The only thing I can't tolerate is someone that misrepresents the truth, that slanders someone, or that makes a mockery of something, that doesn't know what they're talking about. When people cross over into that territory, I lose my mind. I can't help it. I don't like when people don't tell the truth. So what I wanted to do, rather than just assume we're all on the same team, rather than assume we're all walking in with the same set of knowledge, rather than assume any of that, I want to start with a basic money primer, a basic federal finance money primer. Because while we can talk about Australia, we can talk about Japan, we can talk about Russia and China and the UK and Brazil and Venezuela and all these other places, Canada, for you Canucks out there, what we oftentimes do is we just get swept up in bullshit, and we never take the time to ask the most simple questions. What is money? What is currency? What is the US dollar? And why does it matter? Now, unfortunately, tales from the money pit and tales from the left and tales from the conspiracy land talk about the petrodollar. Well, it's not a petrodollar. The United States dollar is the US government's unit of account, like an inch, or a millimeter, or a mile, or a meter, or a kilometer. It's a unit of measure, and it's the government's unit of measure. And the US dollar is the United States government's US dollar. It's the sole issuer of the US dollar. The Federal Reserve, you say, right? Tell Alex Jones that you'll talk to him later. Ron Paul can wait. Give them a few minutes. They'll calm down. Congress spoke the Federal Reserve into existence. Okay? The United States government, as all national governments that retained monetary sovereignty, meaning that they have their sole power, they are the power behind their unit of account. All countries like the UK, who has the Bank of England, a central bank, and the Bank of Japan, that's a central bank. And the Australian National Bank, they have their own version of a central bank. And all of them are monetarily sovereign. All of them own their unit of account. All of them can never go broke on their unit of account. They can never run out of keystrokes. And that's what a unit of account amounts to in a modern money economy today, our current economy. Since 1971-72, the United States fully left the Bretton Woods Accord. The Bretton Woods Accord was a worldwide gold standard. It was really the dollar standard. But when the U.S. left the Bretton Woods Accord, for a variety of reasons, not the least of which was France trying to demand payment in gold, when we left the gold standard for good, we entered into a new regime. That new regime is known as a sovereign, free-floating, non-convertible fiat currency. Fiat meaning by decree. Sovereign meaning we own it, period. Non-convertible means you can't force demand gold for your currency. It is what it is. You get that currency, you have debt in that currency, you get paid in that currency. The government creates that currency every single time Congress authorizes spending. Article 1, Section 8 and Article 1, Section 10, I believe. Ultimately, Congress controls the power of the purse. And the United States government is the sole issuer of the currency. It has given agency to banks to lend as a public purpose servant. However, banks have been bastardized. They've been deregulated. And so banks look like a monster today. They don't look anything like what they were intended to be. As Warren Mosler often says, let's make banking boring again. Okay? Now, if Congress can authorize spending, what does that even mean? When Congress authors or writes a bill and pushes it through and passes both houses, it then sends that bill to the president for signature. But the only group by the Constitution that's allowed to put money into the world is Congress. So when Congress authorizes spending, it sends instructions to the Fed. The Fed then makes keystrokes, enters deposits into the Treasury's accounts. The Treasury then spends those dollars that have newly been created, every single time newly created. You say, well, what about taxes? Aren't my tax dollars funding that? No, they're not. Because we live in a modern fiat currency regime, and not even that, I can go back further. I can go back to colonial times. In fiat currency, the currency when it returns is destroyed. It's done its job. It's a tax credit. The United States dollar being a tax credit means that the government will accept $1 in payment for $1 in tax. Well, if that's the case, then when the government issues a dollar, it's issuing debt, isn't it? So, when the government spends money into existence, it's pushed debt into the economy. Not debt like you and I know it, but it's an obligation now. The government says, I'll accept that $1 for $1 in tax. So that obligation, that when it imposes a tax, payable only in that currency, is what gives that dollar its value. It's not chicken necks. It's not gold bullion. It's not petrodollars. Sorry. It's the tax. The tax is what drives the currency. Many, many moons ago, kings and queens and stuff wanted to build roads. They wanted to build aqueducts. They wanted to build a standing army. They wanted to build. They looked around. They could make people slaves. Slaves been around forever. But what happens when they want to keep the people happy and they create like peasants and stuff like that? What do? What they did was they said, how would you like to come work for me and build me an aqueduct? That guy looks over and says, I'm good. I'm going to keep picking my potatoes and I'm going to go ahead and go fishing. I'm going to till my yard, till my lawn, till my fields, and I'm going to be good. King goes, what if I pay you this gold coin? Guy looks at the gold coin and says, what am I going to do with the gold coin? He says, good point. So he stamps his face on the gold coin. He says, listen, your house has 10 of these gold coins for a tax. If you don't pay me 10 of these gold coins for a tax, we're taking your house. And the guy goes, whoa, how do I get those gold coins? The guy goes, funny you should ask. I want to build this aqueduct over here, and I'm willing to pay you 12 gold coins. Well, sign me up. I want to keep my house. Of course you do. That's the money story. And by doing this, the tax that was imposed to drive the currency, there was no unemployment before it. But once they issued the tax, it created the first unemployed person. You see how that worked? This is nothing fantastical. This is nothing whimsical. This is nothing created out of a fart in thin air. This is the way it is. This is real. This is how it goes. So today, we look at big programs, and we've been told we got to worry about the national debt. We've been told that the national debt is scary. Well, I just sat there and told you what the national debt was. But let me say it in more clear terms. The national debt is the sum total of every untaxed dollar in existence today. Think about that for a minute. That's the national debt. What if we paid back the national debt? The national debt would mean we take all the money out of the economy, because every dollar is debt, but not debt like you and I know it. It just means it's an obligation of the federal government. The federal government doesn't have to tax to spend. It spends first and then taxes some of that back later to drive the need for currency. So what happens if there's too much buying power amongst the peasants, amongst the proles, amongst the rich, amongst whoever? The government can choose to raise taxes, to take away some buying power, to cool off an overheating economy so that we don't have spiraling inflation. So the tax, the federal tax, your hard-earned tax dollars, don't actually pay for spending. Spending's a completely separate task, because when those taxes are returned, they're deleted, they're destroyed. Congressional spending is dollar creation. Congressional taxation is currency destruction, dollar destruction. The birth of the dollar is congressional spending. The death of the dollar is when it's received as a tax. So you see all these good Democrats running around saying, I'm willing to pay more taxes for Medicare for all. I'm willing to pay more taxes for a Green New Deal. It's the price we pay for freedom. Well, taxes definitely are very vital to our currency being able to do the things we need it to do. We, the 99% even. But the level of taxation in America compared to the public purpose spending and the needs of the people is way out of whack. We don't get hardly anything in return for the high level of taxes that we pay. Now, the taxes that we pay are historically not that high. But in relative buying power, the little bit of extra that the average person has in their pocket has diminished to the point where people don't go on vacations anymore. People don't buy anything extra. People are fighting at home. They're miserable. Even with employment at all-time highs, it's not good employment. It's not good paying jobs. It's not permanent jobs. It's not jobs with a future, with growth potential, with anything. A lot of it is the gig economy. So I tell you all this because I want to show you the next step. The next step is the relationship between our federal government and our states and our territories. The federal government is the sole issuer of the currency. The states are currency users. The states, California, as big as you are, you're not a currency issuer, you're a currency user. New York, no matter how badass you are, you're not a currency issuer, you're a currency user. Puerto Rico is a currency user. Detroit, Michigan is a currency user. So when states are talking about raising taxes to pay for things, or that they're having a budget shortfall at the state level, well, they're telling you the truth. States can't create currency. They can't spend it into existence. States are dependent on the federal government. All states, whether they be red states or blue states or purple states, all states are dependent on the federal government spending money into existence. The alternative to our federal government spending money into existence is private credit, which is why banks have run amok. And it's why we have so much debt, because our federal government has turned off the spigot except for the military. And they've pushed us all to banks to borrow money, whether it be for student loans, whether it be for houses, whether it be for clothes, whether it be for cars, whatever it is, healthcare, it's all debt. Some people win the lottery of life, and they've got tons of money laying around, and they never knew what debt was. But those U.S. dollars those rich people have, they're still just a tax credit. However, much of the money you and I get is in the form of loans and credit cards, not in new dollars, because debt, in that term, private debt, has to be paid back. And because banks would be counterfeiters if they created net financial assets like the federal government can, banks then in turn buffer the other side of the ledger with reserves. When they lend money out, there's a reserve entry on the other side of the accounting ledger. And when you pay off your debt, that ledger zeroes out. The money you paid in interest goes to the bank. That's how they make their money. Banks don't lend reserves. There is no such thing as fractional reserve lending. There is no fractional reserve system. Who knew? MMT people. That's who. Modern monetary theory, for those of you who do not understand what I'm talking about. Modern monetary theory is a description, not some future thing we could implement. It is a description of how our currency works today. It's why our federal government was able to spend $750 billion in new money on the military while simultaneously cutting taxes. And yet the left can't get out of its own way. Post after post after post, you watch people saying, my hard-earned tax dollars, I'm willing to pay more taxes for programs. But politically, that's suicide. Just because somebody's willing to pay more taxes doesn't mean it's good for the economy. Now, if you want to pay tax, you want to make the rich pay tax, that just drains money out of the economy. That's a totally different thing. But the rich, cutting the military, doesn't pay for a nickel of new spending. It just cuts spending. The only way you have new spending is if you issue new spending, if Congress authorizes new spending. You don't cut spending here and some piggy bank money goes over there. That's not how it works. The federal government neither has nor doesn't have dollars. It creates them when it spends money into the economy. That should be pretty much a slam dunk, easy to understand. What do bonds do? We sell treasury bonds, right? What are they all about? Well, see, banks, they try and manage an interest rate. And so what they do, the Fed will set an interest rate. And to maintain that interest rate with the overnight window and the overnight rate, they will go ahead and sell bonds to maintain that interest rate. Who's going to buy the bonds? What if they dump the bonds? We always buy them. There's a million of these folks out there that will buy the bonds. Because you know why? Because government debt is the safest thing in the world because it creates the currency. The only people too dumb to get that are the people on the left that could benefit from it. The people on the left who refuse to learn this harpoon themselves when it comes to fighting for a Green New Deal. All bonds are is, in effect, another form of money. They can be used to delay purchasing power, like they did in World War II. People thought they were funding the war effort, but what had happened was every single factory in America was running at 120% capacity. Every woman and child was working round the clock, double shifts. And the men were all fighting a war across the world. So in order to keep the economy from overheating, because they weren't producing the goods and services we needed, because they were spending it on the war effort, not the money was irrelevant. FDR had removed the gold standard during that time, and it was a sovereign, free-floating fiat currency. Now, I'm not going to debate who won it, whether the Russians won World War II, or whether the U.S. won World War II, or whether they did it together. It doesn't matter. What matters is the reason we were able to mobilize half a world away and be as effective as we were is because Uncle Sam was able to crank out the printing press. Well, we have it today. And we only allow it to be used for the military. We never allow it to be used for our health care. We never allow it to be used for our student debt. We never allow it to be used to go to green energy. We keep depending on the rich. We got to eat the rich. We got to tax the rich. We keep fighting that war. And I'm not saying it's bad to tax the rich. So get that right out of your mouth. What I'm saying to you is it's not necessary to tax the rich to take care of the people. We keep pretending like we need rich people money when the government creates it at will. It just needs to pass a bill and spends it. Now let's flash forward to today. We're in the midst of a climate crisis. People are working longer, have less time for their families. They're miserable. They're hopeless. Suicides are up. Happiness is down. People don't see hope. There are people clinging on to filthy fossil fuel jobs because that's what they've always done and that's all they know. The move to green energy has got tons of resistance. It's not just from radical right-wingers. There are unions out there that will fight tooth and nail against a Green New Deal as well, because they see it as eating their lunch. And they use this dynamic to fuel all kinds of xenophobia and all kinds of fears of the foreigners taking their jobs and all kinds of fears about bringing back manufacturing and, oh my God, AI is going to take all of our jobs. The robots are coming, blah, blah, blah. When in reality, our federal government can make our lives phenomenal. It could. It could choose to spend on the people. It could get rid of medical debt, like Bernie Sanders has offered up. It could get rid of student debt, like Bernie Sanders has offered up. It could solve the climate crisis with a Green New Deal, like Bernie Sanders has offered up, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has offered up. And groups like the Sunrise Movement have championed, and folks in the MMT community have championed. It could create a just transition for those people that work in those filthy industries, who are holding on and clutching their pearls for dear life because they are afraid of how their family will be taken care of. And they've got these people out there screaming that automation is taking their jobs, and they have lost all perspective. They have no idea how any of this really works. They allow lying Silicon Valley plutocrats to twist and turn people into believing that all they deserve is $1,000 a month. That there's no work to be done, that robots will do everything from fold your laundry to wipe your ass. Well, this is patently false. Look in your local community sometime if you think I'm lying. Tell me how many schools are run down. Tell me how many median strips are run down. Tell me how many malls are left abandoned, looking like shit, that could be repurposed and turned into housing or any number of things. Look at how many people are suffering today. Look at how many people can't afford childcare. Look at how many people can't afford guitar lessons, art lessons. Folks, the list is long of all the stuff that's in our local communities that is left undone because it's not deemed profitable by these merchants of automation. So that work is never done. And we have allowed them to make us believe that work is going away and that we're all going to be autonomous units just receiving a UBI and everything will be hunky-dory. Well, I reject that premise outright. First of all, it's false, verifiably false. But second of all, it's a belief system born in desperation. This isn't progress. It's capitulation to capital. And so you look at a Green New Deal and all it's cracked up to be: retrofitting smokestacks across America, cleaning up the environment, going to renewable energy, safe renewable energy, creating jobs, millions and millions of jobs, good paying jobs, not job guarantee jobs, but by investing in green energy and investing in our infrastructure and investing in the people of America and investing in our own collective well-being. A federal job guarantee is a just transition for many folks that are leaving industries that are bad. For people who haven't worked in forever but would like to get back in the workforce and serve their local community. For artists that want to be able to do their craft. For people that want to care for a sick relative. That's work. And under the job guarantee, that's the kind of work that a community can choose to fund. Payable by the federal government, administered by the local and state governments. You walk in there anywhere in the country and you have a job on demand. It's a right, it's a guarantee. And if you don't like the job you get there, you can pick up and ask for another one. You can go somewhere, you can do whatever you want. That's the point. It's freedom. Real freedom. Not fake serfdom freedom without the work. Actually serving your community, making your lives of your neighbors and yourself better. And the reason why this matters isn't just about giving people money. It is to create a counterbalance against capital so that as people need to leave an employer, they're no longer hamstrung if there's no jobs out there. Or if people are in bad situations, there's no issue of picking up and going somewhere and having a job instantly as a right. And there's no more hatred for the immigrants because there's no competition in terms of whether there's a job or not. There's jobs for all. Jill Stein used to say, I want to have an employment office on every corner, not an unemployment office on every corner. Now, they didn't get the economics right. Unfortunately, the Green Party has chosen not to get the economics right. But they had the right idea with the job guarantee. And Bernie Sanders, the Green New Deal that he and AOC and others are advancing, comes with a job guarantee, which is a requirement. It's needed. Because how do you mobilize to meet the needs and demands of the climate crisis we're facing right now today? How do you move people away from these industries that are destroying our planet and provide their families a landing spot? They're not looking for a UBI. They're looking for opportunity. They don't want to be trapped on 1,000. They want to have opportunities. And for those who can't work, those who are disabled, there's a ton of things people like that can do in the job guarantee. But if they don't want to, we already have a basic income. It's called Social Security. And it can be expanded to meet any number of criteria we choose for it to do. And it is not funded by FICA any more than any other program is funded by a tax. FICA is there to make you feel like you're putting skin in the game, but it's deleted just like any other tax. There's a keystroke tally in a spreadsheet, but your dollars aren't funded out of that. That's not how it works. I've said this countless times. I'll say it one more time. Alan Greenspan and Paul Ryan were talking at a congressional hearing. And Paul Ryan leaned forward and said, wouldn't it be better to privatize Social Security so we can keep it affordable and solvent? And Alan Greenspan said, whoa, hold on now. There's nothing making Social Security insolvent. We can fund it forever. That's not the issue. We can raise the money, no problem. We can add money to it, no problem. The problem is, can we create an economy where the real goods and services are available? That's the question. And Paul Ryan looked like a doofus because he had no answer. Typical of his breed. But this problem plagues the left as well. How many lefties have you seen raising their hands saying, we got to raise the cap on Social Security? Why? What is your point? What is your end game? Why not get rid of FICA? It's the most regressive tax there is. Why not get rid of it? It's not funding Social Security. Do you get it yet? Has this little light bulb gone off in your noodle? Do you get what I'm saying yet? Because this is a really important understanding when you start assessing how we're going to pay for it. When you start assessing the value of why we don't want a UBI versus why we want the job guarantee with a basic income of expanded Social Security. Number one, Walmart or whoever can subsidize their shitty pay with your UBI. They cannot subsidize their shitty pay with a job guarantee that pays more than Walmart did. And now Walmart has to raise their rates up higher, their pay, to meet or beat that job guarantee. Now all of a sudden you've lifted all ships, but you've got work, you've got production. People aren't without jobs. And Walmart now has to compete to get those people to work these shit jobs. And maybe they have to increase the benefits. Maybe they have to make the environment better. Maybe in order to be seen as a viable employer, maybe they have to do something for the people. That's transformational, isn't it? So you have to ask yourself, if anything that I said tonight strikes you as odd, I assure you I can say this all day long because I know it inside out. It's probably not me that has the learning to do on this. Just saying. If you think I'm stupid, bring it. Okay? I'm not stupid. I care, though. I care very much. And I put up with incredible amounts of abuse from really, really bad people. Really bad people. I have a special needs son that I have to live forever to ensure he's taken care of because really bad people would try to sideline our work. Really bad people. And so my son is dependent on me. That's why I do this. Because I need us to be successful. Whether there's bad people trying to cut my legs out from under me or not. Smearing us, talking shit. Really, really bad people do that stuff. And they don't think about what it is that we just said. And what we just said is the way we go for a Green New Deal. It's the way we go to take care of our families. It's the way we go to survive cataclysmic climate change. It's the way we raise the standard of living for African Americans, whites, blacks, greens, grays, everybody. It's the way we stop hating immigrants by creating a society with more equality. Is it the only thing we do? Oh, it's just the beginning. But once you understand how the economy works, once you understand how federal finance works, the right wing can't lie to you anymore about the national debt. The Democrats can't lie to you anymore about the need to balance budgets or reduce deficits. They can't lie to you anymore. If you stop thinking you know when you don't, and you take a moment to learn, the people united in truth, not mysticism, not feel-goods, not love, although that's great, but the people united in truth above all. Truth wins. And truth is what will set us free. I've seen a lot of people love bad people And I've never seen it transform the things that we need transformed without truth with it. Love without truth isn't love at all. It's a lie. Love is only love when it's in the context of truth. And truth will indeed set us free. I'm Steve Grumbine with Real Progressives. Have a great night.